So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you here today.
Thank you, Radha. Radha, so tell me one of your childhood memories that brings a smile on your face today as well.
I think my most joyful childhood memory, it's quite a traditional one, but over here, because we have such a mix of all the different wonderful celebrations, it was Christmas. And it was really, I think, the most joyful time for me for many, many years in my childhood, because it was a time when all of the family came together. And it was just, a moment where you could be with each other and celebrate life. And there wasn't anything needed from you rather than just being with each other, sharing beautiful food, so much laughter, and really a time to come home. So throughout all of my childhood, it was always a time where I felt most at peace and most connected to people, which I think is obviously so, so important for all of us. And that's been something I've really treasured right now through all the years when I've traveled, when I've lived away. That knowledge that I had that beautiful heart and that family back home really kept me strong.
Yeah, and when you are with your family, it's a beautiful feeling because, as you mentioned, that you feel like home, not because you are in the house where you're born and brought up in, rather you are with people with whom you started your journey. So tell me about a little bit about your family background, where you hail from.
Of course. So yeah, I mean, I have quite a mixed background. So my dad is Indian, and he is from Kenya. He was born and raised in the savannah in Kenya. My mum is Irish and Welsh, and they met here in North Wales. And my dad actually, they met originally at a yoga class, and my dad is a yogi, as is my mother. And I think there's still photographs of when I was in my mum's belly. She was even doing yoga then. So I had a love affair with yoga from even before I was born, and I was very fortunate to grow up in a really surrounded by yoga, and with a very beautiful sort of grounded spiritual basis for everything. And I was lucky enough to watch my family and all those around me really living a very connected life, and very much living their purpose, very much showing me how it's done, which I think is such a gift as a child. We can be told what to do, we can be told what's right and wrong, but really what children see is what they learn. So I was able to really see people living their dream, and I had the opportunity to travel with my dad around the world and, spend time watching him living his dream and helping to inspire others. And I think through that, actually, and through watching both of my parents and my family, I was able to have the courage to know that you can step out of the ordinary and live an extraordinary life, but you just have to have a dream big enough that will drag you there, because there's a lot of people out there that are afraid of stepping out of the norm and out of comfort. But I was really fortunate to actually see that both my parents were really courageous in living their dream, and that's really shaped me from when I was very young to know that no dream is too big. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's so true. And I've really been able to watch and learn from those that have gone before me.
Such an inspiring statement that no dream is too big. And you also mentioned about purpose. You also mentioned about following your dreams. And also, I've heard many people talking about their calling. And I personally feel the words like calling, the words like purpose, following your dreams, they are from the same family. Very curious to understand from you, uh, what is calling for you?
My calling, I think there's a lot in the media and popular culture and self-development about finding your calling, and it can seem a little bit difficult to grasp, I think, for a lot of people, and for myself included, because we live in a world where there is so much choice and we have so many opportunities that we can actually be quite overwhelmed with the amount of different paths we could take, because we have a world of opportunity. So I think for me, my calling really aligns with the concept of Dharma, which some people may be familiar with, which is very much about something higher than, what job you have. It's your
Yeah.
purpose.
Something
It's
higher
that
than,
thing that,
yeah, something higher than who you are as an individual.
exactly, it's taking you out of the individual and into the collective. So what, for me, your calling is woven into your life and it hides in plain sight. It's almost deceptively obvious what your calling is when you start to look for it. And I really sort of tried to start uncovering it, and it's like an excavation in archaeology. You have to start uncovering what your purpose is, and that's often done through introspection and really looking at, okay, what gifts have I been given that are totally unique to me? What are the things that I can do in this world that are going to create the greatest impact? What are the things that make me feel energized? Those are often indicators and signposts towards what your purpose is. So for me, it was a case of how can I transform the most people's lives and create the most growth within myself in a sustainable way that is joyful? Because oftentimes we have this association with, pain and sacrifice, and sometimes that is necessary, but I truly believe that in the long term our purpose should be something that lights our soul up and makes us feel joy, makes us feel energy and light and enthusiasm and passion. And yes, there will be hard days, as we all have on our journeys, but when you have a purpose and a calling and a dharma that is part of who you are and part of your soul, then even the hardest of trials and tribulations will seem easy or easier, because we know we are doing something that is bigger than us.
Yeah, so beautifully explained. In fact, in Hinduism, dharma signifies living in a way that makes life and the universe possible. And that includes, I think, duties, rights, laws, conduct, virtues, and the right way of living. Now, having said that, Radha, if you were to advise that how one can find his or her calling, what would be your response to that?
So I think for many young people, and I think for me in particular, the case is very much trial and error sometimes at the beginning. Some people are born with a very innate knowledge of what their purpose is. I was not one of those people. I have many, many interests, and I had many passions, and I find many things very, very enjoyable. So for me, it was a case of experiencing them. So going to speak to people that were in those careers, going to get work experience, or going to volunteer, really stepping into the world of those realities. And often we can have an image that's portrayed in movies, we can have an image that we are told by others of what a good job is or what a worthwhile career is. But actually, until you're in it and until you've tasted a little bit of what that really feels like to live in a day of that, you can't really know if it's your thing. You can't really know if it's that thing that really lights you up. So I was given the guidance by my parents, which was, in your 20s, just try things. You don't need to, yes, keep building who you are and build your character, but also don't be afraid to try a job, and if it doesn't work, change it. Try a career, go and actually be brave enough to go and ask some people in that line of work to say, you know what, can I take you for a coffee and ask you what it's really like to be in that line of work? Don't be scared to go and try and experience things. And often we're put off because we're afraid of what people will think of us. And a big one is we're terrified of failing. But really, one thing my dad always said was fail upwards. Failure is not failure if you grow from it. So how can you find a way of learning through failure? The thing is, so many successful people say, it's when you failed multiple times, it shows you're trying, and it shows you're learning, it shows you're growing. If you haven't failed, you're doing life wrong because you're not trying enough. So it's actually embracing failure, but failure upwards. So you are growing as a person and you are developing who you are. Because in the end, all the things we try and all the experiences we have, I mean, you hear of Steve Jobs, and he dropped out of college and he went to that one class on calligraphy and typeface. And that was what was underpinning, a lot of the typography for the Macintosh. Those little things, the work experience you did for one summer, they could become absolute tools for you later on in life. So I would say, when it comes to your calling, try things. And when you have found it, you'll know. It's like when people say, when you find the one, you'll know. You'll fall in love with that purpose. And it might be that it's not for your whole life. It might be for this decade, this is what you're meant to do. But the real gift in all of it is just try. Don't be afraid. Experience it and know that everything you do, every action you take will be growing you as who you are. Nothing is wasted if you learn from it. And all of those little experiences will develop you to be a strong, wiser, more grounded person that can really empathize with a lot more people as you grow older. So that would be, I'd say, my one piece of advice would be to just try and experience life fully.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to fail.
So the nuggets that I picked up from here is primarily go explore,
Yes.
go and experiment, try a career, ask and meet people, take them out for coffee and explore and check with them how it feels like to be in this space, to be in this career. And as you mentioned, there are primarily two reasons why people don't even try. They're either terrified of failing or they are thinking what people might think about them. This reminds me of, there's a beautiful quote that I read sometime. It says, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. And now, you also mentioned that you would get to know that that's my calling, right? That connects me to my next question. You have been an artist, you've been a presenter, you've been a singer in the past. You have tried your hands in corporates. So how did you get into this space? How did you know that that's my calling now?
So for me, I primarily work in healthcare, so I'm a pharmacist. So I did my master's in pharmacy, but I also 10 years ago, God, it feels like a lifetime ago now. When I was 15, I completed a 2-year teacher training course in yoga, and actually, having grown up in the way that I did, surrounded by a lot of yoga and spirituality, that was an underpinning value and a set of values, in fact, throughout all of my career. So for me, it's almost been a full circle, because I have gone out and I have explored and I have taken gifts from each of the careers that I've been in. So I worked when I was traveling and presenting on stage. I found that I really enjoyed that. And it made me figure out that actually what I want to be sharing, I want it to be a message that I'm completely connected to. And I want it to be something that creates transformation. I don't just want to be doing necessarily just a promotional video for someone else's message. So I really needed to make sure that I was speaking words that really resonated with me and that aligned with my core values. When I was working as a singer, that was a really big learning in terms of how I was caught up a little bit in what the world was thinking of me, and also caught up in an idea of what I thought would make me happy, because I was on the stage and I was performing and I loved that. But I also realized that it's very easy to get caught up in a case of you are performing for their response, not performing for the love of it. So you're performing because you want people to think, oh my God, aren't you incredible? And I realized actually that was causing me to really struggle when I was performing, because my joy came from how people responded. Really, where the joy should come from is giving all you've got and not being attached to the outcome. And actually that was a really big learning from that. And then when I I've worked in many different jobs, but every single career has taught me different things about myself. And the way that I ended up coming back to what I'm doing now, which is working partially with patients in healthcare, but also with nutrition, yoga, with fitness, but I'm presenting yoga and wellbeing, it's the one thing that I kept doing throughout. It's the one thing that kept coming back to me. And it was almost like the universe kept coming to my front door and knocking on the door and saying, are you ready? Are you ready for this? Like, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. And it's the thing that I used to look at in my spare time. And even when I was a teenager, I remember my mum bought me this beautiful book called The Irreducible Mind. And I would read books on neuroscience and about the way that we have the capacity to change the way that our brains are wired and the way that our thoughts shape our reality. And it was, it's often the book you read in the bath can sometimes be a really good indicator of what you're meant to be pursuing, because that's what brought me joy. And when I was in university, I did my dissertation on Alzheimer's disease, and it just kept reigniting this spark that I am absolutely in love with the way that we are created, the way that our thoughts shape our world. And what I realized with yoga, with meditation, with fitness, with nutrition, we actually have the capacity to create the building blocks of our bodies. And in doing that, we can change our world, because in the end, the entire universe that we perceive around us is simply our way of recognizing our reality. And that's all created through our brains. So actually, you can change your entire world by changing how you move your body, how you think, how you eat, how you breathe. And what an amazing gift to be able to be given back control of part of our world. And also kind of releasing control and saying, you know what, I'm part of this beautiful universe and I want to experience it fully. So that's kind of, yeah, it's a very convoluted way of going to it, but overall, I would say it's the one thing that I kept coming back to. It was the books that I would choose to read in my spare time. It was the videos, the museums, the places I was drawn to. And actually I thought, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to spend my life in love with each day.
Yeah, yeah. As I often share with people, and Radha, thank you so much for sharing the instances or your conversation with yourself when you said that when you are performing for the love of singing or dancing and not for the love of getting an acknowledgement from your audience or not being attached to the outcome. I often share with people that the universe is talking to us every moment. The question is, am I listening? Universe is always supporting us to move towards something that we are born for. The question is, am I listening? Universe is giving us more and more opportunities so that we can create for what we are here for. Also, this reminds me of a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was very curious to understand from him, to which Amit responded. Amit said that when you ask for something from the universe might not give you exactly that thing. Universe will definitely give you an opportunity to strengthen that muscle. So for example, if I'm saying that I would like to be more resilient in my life, the universe might not give me resilience tomorrow morning. Nobody's going to come at my door, knock the door and say, here is the gift of resilience from the universe. Of course, it won't happen. However, universe will give me several opportunities where I can further strengthen my resilience.
Yeah.
If I'm looking forward to have more gratitude in my life, the universe will give me more opportunities where I can express my gratitude towards the world. Now, while this journey is on, now all these things that we are talking about, they sound really beautiful. They sound like a living in an ideal world. But the world is not like that. Let's accept it. You have to face certain challenges. You have to face certain criticism. You have to face certain cynicism. You have to face some really dark patches in your life while you are traveling. So tell me about one of those darkest phases of your life. How did you manage to get out of that? And what are your learnings?
It's beautifully tied in actually with exactly what you shared there. And it's almost, when they say be careful what you wish for. And I remember at the beginning of last year, I was really determined that I wanted to really use the next couple of years of my life for serious transformation and really establishing who I was as an individual. And I'd been in education for about 5 years, and I'd had 1 year of traveling. And then I knew that something had to change, and the universe was actually really kind in one way, but it was a very rapid growth period for me. So I moved out of, I'd lived away for 10 years. So I moved out of my apartment and moved back home. I changed my job and took up a full-time job for the first time. I left a relationship that I'd been in, and a lot changed. My entire world changed, actually. And there was almost a period of mourning, like I was sad to lose an identity that I'd been building for so long, because in my eyes before that, I was following the approved trajectory for how a life should unfold. There is an expectation we place upon ourselves, and I am absolutely the worst for this because I set incredibly high expectations of myself. But all of us, we have an image of how life is supposed to look. And prior to that, I was on the right path. I was building my life in the way it was supposed to look. And when I made this shift of changing my job and moving back home and taking a full-time job, so I was having to go from traveling most of the year to traveling not a lot because it wouldn't allow that, I lost a part of my identity. And it was probably the most difficult year of my life. I've really struggled because I was faced with a lot of questions about who am I? When you take away all of the image of what you've built up, who really are you when you're brought back to your core? And it wasn't easy, but it built me. It made me the person I am today. And actually, in that 1 year, I think it was even in those 6 months, I knew more about myself and I grew more as a person than I have in the previous 10 years. And I am now happier in myself and happier in my skin than I've ever been. And I realized, actually, probably one of the greatest things that I have ever realized, which was that I had an attachment to a story that I had written about myself. And I needed to learn to let go of living for other people's approval. It always comes back to that, living for other people's opinions and being afraid of making my own choices, because we have so much beautiful guidance in our life. But if you don't take time to really get to know your own inner guidance system, you can spend many years of your life pursuing a goal that wasn't yours to begin with, only to look back and realize this wasn't ever what I wanted. It was what I was told I should want. And actually, it was beautiful. And last year, I let go of a story that wasn't mine. And it was beautiful and it grew me. I have no regrets about the last 10 years, but it was a pivotal moment in that I knew I had to make a change. And I had to really reconnect with nature, reconnect with my meditation, reconnect with that which is eternal within us, whatever you may call that, be it the soul, be it our breath, our hearts that beat inside of us. And I let go of an old version of myself,
Yeah.
and a reality that it wasn't completely clear. It was clouded by other people's judgments. And actually, I gained a clarity and a simplicity in my life that I've never experienced. And that's, I think, often we're caught in the trap of a busy life is a productive life, and a busy life and a shiny, sparkly life is a good life. When in reality, what I found was the simple beauty in life was found in doing so much less, but being more present. And it was an awakening. And I'm so grateful that I had my family to support me through it, and my friends. I don't think I would have come through in the same way without them. But I'm also really grateful to the universe, because like you said, the universe gives you an opportunity for gratitude. It gives you an opportunity to grow. It gives you an opportunity to connect to yourself. And last year, I had all of those opportunities thrown at me. And because of the support of those around me, and because of my ability to actually accept that change was going to happen, whether I liked it or not, meant that I've come out of it, I think, much stronger, more joyful, more connected person. And I'm genuinely so grateful.
Yeah. And Radha, isn't this incredible that we spend our whole life in accumulating things, building a story around who we think we are, holding and being attached to an identity. And then we come across a point where we realize that everything that we have been accumulated for so many years, everything that we've been holding on to, truth with ourselves, the story that we've been holding on, it's no longer serving us. And the moment I'm willing to let go of that story, a new world of opportunities open up for me. You know, as This reminds me of what Maddie Oliver said once. She said, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." Now, here I'm saying that someone I loved, so let's say it's me who loved myself, gave myself a gift of darkness. And later on, I realized that itself was a gift, provided I'm willing to change the glasses and the lens through which I'm looking at life.
So before we hit the halftime and dive into a rapid fire round of some fun questions that I stored for this segment, we have more such conversations happening on Coaching Matters. Coaching Matters is a platform where we bring to you world-class experts and coaches to share their wisdom, their expertise and experience. So if you really care about bringing the coaching lifestyle into your life, Coaching Matters is a must for you. We have this on every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 7:30 p.m. India Standard Time. You can save your seat right now at www.xmonks.com/coaching-matters. See you there soon.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing what you have shared. I think it's a great start. Now let's bring a little joy in this conversation now, and then I would love to hear more about the kind of work that you're doing, your understanding of nutrition, your understanding of health, your understanding of well-being. So before we get there, I've got a surprise for you, and that's a rapid question answer round.
Oof, okay, bring it on.
Fasten your seatbelts. So here we go. And here's a disclaimer. You can't think before you respond to this question. In just one breath, you have to give me a word or a sentence at the max.
Okay.
Done? Game?
Let's do it.
Beautiful.
Sounds good.
Your childhood friend you miss the most?
Laura.
Your favorite hobby?
Running.
What do you love to cook?
Cheese on toast.
Your favorite holiday destination?
Oof. The beach.
Your biggest fear?
The dark.
One dish that your partner must know how to cook?
Cheese on toast. It's a priority.
One habit you wish you could change in yourself?
Netflix.
An unfulfilled aspiration?
Write a book.
A life-transforming quote for you?
Live every day as if it's your last.
Your role model?
My dad.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
I didn't know I love cheese on toast so much, if I'm honest.
Now I know that.
I haven't had that in years.
You know what, Radha, I remember when last time when we were speaking, and you just mentioned that your father is your role model. And you mentioned about his advice to you. And that stayed with me. And the way you said that, I will share that with you, but I would love to hear it from you in your tonality when you spoke about that there are not enough years in life to learn from your own choices, success and failures. And then you mentioned about that, and that's why you must learn from others. So I would request if you can just share this quote with our audience again before we move on.
So yeah, it's one of the pieces of guidance that's really stayed with me and been a great guide, which is, as you said, there are not enough years in life to learn from your own choices, successes and failures. And that is why you must learn from others. And this is a fact. This isn't just philosophy. We do not have enough time in our very brief time on this planet to learn everything that we need to if we want to really maximize the capacity of our life. And it's all been about how do we grow with the most effectiveness? How can we really utilize the hours in our day? And it's learn from others. It's the importance of having a mentor. How can you learn from someone else's successes? But also a way of looking at every person you meet. If you see someone, I never want another person to suffer or struggle, but they're there as a teacher. What can you learn from their struggle that you can take on and say, okay, there is a gift in every conversation. There's a gift in every engagement with another. They're all there as a guru, as a teacher, a guide. So look at your family, look at your friends, look at the people on the television, look at the man you pass on the street. What can you learn from them? And often people's perceived failures or their struggles can also be a great guide to prevent you from having to make the same pitfalls. And a lot of times this is very true with entrepreneurs and with people starting new ventures, that you can save so much pain if you're willing to have the humility to learn from another's mistakes. And again, mistakes are only mistakes if you don't learn from them. So I use that word very loosely, but find a coach, find a mentor, and allow yourself to learn from someone else's blueprint. So as they say so often, when you're looking in the self-development world, the answers are already there. It's a formula in many cases. So who has got the formula right? And the evidence will be in their life. If you want to learn how to make money, you don't go and ask the guy who's only got £5 in his pocket. If you want to be healthy, you don't ask someone who's got heart disease and diabetes and asthma and all of these conditions and that's really struggling to even have the energy to wake up. What you can do is you go to someone who is in peak state and learn how did they get there. But the person who's struggling with their health is also there to teach you. What choices have they made that you should avoid? What can you learn from them? So it's never a case of judging another, and it's never a case of someone's right or someone's wrong or someone's better or worse, but it's a case of utilize everything in your life, utilize every person, and see, maybe challenge yourself in a day. At the end of the day, you try and get one gift, one gem of a lesson from each meaningful conversation that you've had. Try and learn something from the woman who serves you a coffee, or in these times when we're not outside of our house, what are the things you can learn from someone who's speaking on social media? Maybe you can watch a TED talk about someone who has really excelled in the field that you wish to pursue. So that quote for me really stuck with me, because I'm someone who's very much a high achiever, and I want to max out my capacity to achieve, to learn, and to grow. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to use every person around me, and I hope they do the same with me. I hope people can learn from my mistakes. I hope people can learn from my successes. And in that way, there's never a wasted day. There's never a wasted moment, because you have your teacher right in front of you.
And life becomes a progressive journey every day, because either you're learning from somebody what to do, or you're learning from somebody else what not to do. Either to follow what we call as role modeling, that go to a person who has actually made millions, just check with him what is it that he's doing on day-to-day basis, what are the habits that he has actually imbibed in himself, which is allowing him to create the wealth that he has been able to create. At the same time, look at somebody who has actually struggled. In fact, just before this conversation, I was talking to another friend of mine, and I asked her if you can connect me to somebody who's a successful entrepreneur. He thought for a while. She said, Gaurav, I can connect you to somebody who is an entrepreneur, who started his company a couple of years back, and he's very sharp. However, his venture is not that successful. So I said, then please connect me with him, because failure teaches you as much as success does.
Definitely.
Now, having said that, let's shift gears. And it would be really unfair at my part not to extract anything from you when a master is there. And you are known to be a wellness coach. And so I'm just wondering, Radha, what do you think is the biggest myth in the wellness industry?
So the biggest myth, God, there's quite a lot of them going around, I must admit. I would say probably the biggest myth in the wellbeing industry nowadays is about the capacity for time being so necessary for wellness. And I think it's because it's the biggest excuse that I actually see in many, many people around me, in patients and clients, is that we don't have enough time to be healthy. We don't have enough resources to be healthy. And I think you can look around the planet and you can see some of the communities, some of the native tribes that don't necessarily have a lot of money or resources are actually incredibly healthy. So I'd say the biggest myth, and the one we need to stop telling ourselves, is the fact that I don't have time. I don't have the money to be healthy. I don't have the resources. Yes, for some people it is difficult, but there is ways that all of us have the power and the capacity to make our lives healthier, to get more nutrients, to make better choices each and every day. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest myths that I see. And if I know you said only one, but I would also say one of the biggest myths is that it needs to be complicated or difficult. And I see that with the over information that is seen on social media by many people that aren't necessarily professionals or health experts, or necessarily sharing the correct information at times, which can be quite dangerous. And they can really overcomplicate health. Health isn't meant to be complicated. And when we talk about health as a whole, it's about mental, physical, and spiritual health. And when you're healthy, it shouldn't be a diet that restricts you and leaves you feeling miserable. Health is about something that nourishes you on every single level. So when you're looking at something healthy, it should be simple and it should nourish every part of who you are. So I'd say the second biggest myth would be that it has to be complicated and it has to be hard. Good health is easy, fun, and simple.
Yeah. So tell me, what's your approach to well-being, and what is well-being for you?
So well-being for me is, like I said, very much encompasses every state of being. So for me, I gave a keynote last year, and it was encompassing the 4 parts that I believe make up true well-being, and that was under the acronym SNAP, SNAP. So that was sleep, nutrition, activity, and purpose. So for me, that's often where I would start off with someone. I would have a look at those 4 areas of their life, and I would say, okay, which areas do I feel need the most work, and which area that if we focus on will create the most change in your life? And often most people will have difficulties in all of them, because we live in a modern world where it's difficult to have peak health without a little bit of thought and creativity, because the world itself doesn't lend an easy path always to well-being. We're surrounded by temptation. But often I would say, okay, let's have a look first at your sleep. So that is often one of the first underpinning values that I'd look at. Then looking at their food, what they're putting in their body, how they're fueling themselves, how they're creating the beautiful cells of their body. Activity, and this encompasses yoga, this encompasses cardiovascular training, strength and resistance training. And then the last one, which is often sort of forgotten about in the wellness sector sometimes, is purpose. And this is absolutely huge, because the reason I believe health and nutrition, fitness, well-being is so vital is because it doesn't matter what business you're trying to run. It doesn't matter if you're running a huge company or if you're running a solo enterprise, whether you're working in a shop, whether you're cleaning windows, anything and everything you do requires health. And actually, being the greatest service to this world, we can only follow our Dharma if we're alive and well enough to do so. So for me, I want to help people to achieve their best. And the way that I feel that I can most easily do that is by ensuring they're in their peak state to be able to share their gifts with the world.
Yeah. So in fact, Radha, we have already spoken about, and thank you so much for giving this acronym of SNAP, sleep, nutrients, activity, and purpose. So we've already spoken about purpose, incidentally. Let's get deeper into the sleep part. So, as per my understanding, one should take 7 to 8 hours of sleep on daily basis. At the same time, I've come across people, and there are articles in different newspapers about people who are very successful as per the societal norms. They are okay sleeping 4 to 5 hours on daily basis. So what's your take on that? What is the reality according to you?
So that is always the thing that, a lot of people will quote when I tell them, you need to get your 8 hours of sleep ideally a night. So often it is between sort of 7 to 9 hours that most people I would recommend get, depending on your personal state. There is a very, very small percentage of people that can do sort of high performance work on less sleep. There is a small percentage, it's known, and all of us as human beings have slightly different sleep patterns. So I don't know if you've heard of the sort of the terms, you know, the morning lark and the night owl. So some people are actually predisposed to working, their primary active state is later on in the day, and some people work better earlier on in the day, and the population is fairly evenly split. But some people will find that, you know, the working day and the working hours that are set for them, so the 9 to 5, is actually not conducive with their own internal body clocks. So the term circadian rhythm, so we all have a circadian rhythm, and we have a natural biological clock which is just over 24 hours if you actually took away sort of all the external cues. So 8 hours, 7 to 9 hours as a window, but I would say an average of 8 hours I would recommend every person gets. And yes, there will be some outliers, as is with every biological factor.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly statistically unlikely that you are one of those outliers. There are things such as in the yoga world, there are things like yoga nidra, which is known as the yogic sleep, which can allow you to have sort of high intensity rejuvenation in a shorter period of time. But again, these are slightly more complex factors, and I would say to the majority of your listeners and the majority of clients that I work with, go for the 8 hours, because the downsides of not getting enough sleep, and that's not just hours, it's also quality of sleep, is incredibly damaging. And I mean, you are taking years off your life. You are increasing your risk of an absolute plethora of conditions. So is it worth the risk to find out if you're part of the, you know, the 2% that can have less hours sleep? Probably not.
Yeah.
So use also yourself as your own guinea pig, as I do with myself. What is the peak number of hours? I am someone who really loves their sleep, and I probably am more towards the 9 hours than the 8 hour mark. And I know that because my performance the next day, my mental acuity, my energy levels, my eating habits, everything improves when I get a significant quality sleep. So you know yourself better. Everyone that's listening will know how they feel after their sleep. It might be that you're closer to 7 hours and you feel a bit more groggy at 9, but you also have to kind of experiment and see what works. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. You know, while I was doing just research before I was supposed to speak to you, then I found that sleep is an essential period of renewal for our bodies and our brain. Sleep facilitates rest, repair, memory, learning, productivity. It boosts our creativity. It increases our resilience. It improves our emotional health and decreases our negative reactions to stress, and so much more. And at the same time, if I look at, there are so many lifestyle diseases which are happening today in the world. It's primarily because of lack of sleep. Now, if you were to let us know 3 ways that could help us to have a sound sleep, where would you begin?
So I would probably say the simplest way to change it is to look at your intake of screen use. Basically, how often are you looking at your TV screen, your phone screen, your iPad, your laptop? We live in a very technological world, which is really helpful in many ways, otherwise I wouldn't be able to be talking to you now in India. But it also has a downside in that our biology hasn't quite caught up with our technology. We have had, you know, so many thousands of years of evolution behind us where we didn't have technology around. So our internal biological clocks are not used to this. So the high wavelength of blue light that's emitted by our screens, by our phones, by our computers, it mimics almost the wavelength of sunlight, and it tells our brains it's daytime, which inhibits melatonin production. And that's absolutely vital for triggering the sleep cascade, which allows us to get a deep and restful sleep. It's almost like an indicator telling us it's time for sleep. So one of the easiest things you can do is try and have a technology blackout, or if you can't do that for the whole evening, try and have maybe half an hour before bed where you have no technology. But prior to that, look at things like on iPhones, we have night mode. On your computer, you can get an app called Flux, which is free. And that basically dims the light and changes the wavelength from blue to red. And all of these things mean that they have less of an impact on your internal body clock and allow your body to have the normal circadian rhythm where you have the increase of cortisol in the morning and the increase of melatonin in the evening.
Yes.
Another way of actually ensuring that you get enough melatonin released in the evening is making sure you get a high enough hit of sunlight and daylight early on in the day. So if you can, try and get out for a walk or a run or out to see the sky or the sunshine where you are, or the rain where I am, during the day. And that will mean that you get more of a restful sleep then in the evening. And I still think a technology blackout for the last half hour to an hour before bed is so important, not just for the screen use, but also for the amount of information we are often pouring into our brains that will then be going into a whole night. So if you look at the news last thing before you go to bed, that's what's going to be ruminating around your mind. Last thing, do you really want to focus all of your energy on that?
Yeah.
So first thing would be screens. The second thing that I find really helpful is a sleep routine. So you can have external cues that allow you to wind down. And we're almost training ourselves to tell our brains what to expect. So having a regular bedtime, doing self-massage or having essential oils or reading a certain lovely book that you really enjoy, having a bath, doing a simple yoga practice. Have a little routine that you really look forward to and that allows your body to know, okay, we're getting ready for bed.
Sleep. Yeah.
Totally. And the last thing, and this is, I sit here now with my cup of coffee, watch your caffeine intake, because, caffeine can stick around in the body. There's different sort of numbers for how long, but often the half-life, which is the time it takes for half of the caffeine to be got rid of within the body, is about 5 to 7 hours. So if you think about it, 3 PM, if you have a cup of coffee, you've still got that in your body, possibly at 10 o'clock at night, half of the caffeine still there. So try and limit the caffeine you have after lunchtime if you can. Stick to decaffeinated versions or low caffeine. And some people can find they can have a coffee and fall asleep straight away, but a lot of people really do find the quality and depth of their sleep will be impaired by high caffeine intake.
Yeah. So since you're talking about coffee, and I do understand that 3 things that you mentioned. One is looking at the screen time on your day-to-day basis. Be aware of that. The second one is creating the sleeping patterns for yourself. And what are those external alarms or the external alerts that I can have that would help me to understand that now it's sleeping time. The third one is the consumption of coffee. Now, I would love to hear from you, your views about nutrients, right? How do I decide which nutrients are good for my body?
So there is a general blueprint in terms of the basic necessities of what nutrients are needed for people. There is, I think, probably one of the easiest indicators for what's good for you as an individual is how do you feel after you eat? How, for that sort of, when you have a really big greasy pizza, or if you have like a load of chips, you feel tired, you feel sluggish, you have low energy. Ideally, what they say within Ayurveda, which is the sort of nutrition design that I follow, is that you should feel very much the same after you've had a meal, if not more energized, because your body should be able to easily digest the food. In terms of the actual components of nutrition, I think some of the things that are very much missing in our current food picture are things like fiber. And that has started to come to more of the forefront now of nutrition, the importance of fiber. And, we're feeding this beautiful gut microbiome, which is now coming luckily into sort of more popular culture. And our gut microbe is vital for our immune function, for our mood, for many of the long-term conditions. A healthy gut can mean a healthy life, a clear mind. So oftentimes making sure we have good fiber that the gut microbiome are able to feed on is really vital. Other things, to be honest, if you get a full, varied, balanced diet, you should be getting the nutrients you need. So taking supplements is not always necessary, but there are a couple of things that I would say people could take as a supplement. And for me personally, I take vitamin D and I take vitamin B12 and vitamin C. Those are sort of my baseline. Vitamin D, because in this country especially, I don't think it would be as much of a problem in India, but we have a serious deficiency of vitamin D in quite a lot of the population, especially in the colder months. And I'm a vegetarian, so B12 is something that I am intrinsically sort of lacking in my diet. And then there are other supplements and things that people can take, but if you are getting a variety of different fruits and vegetables, you're reducing your consumption of processed food and you're increasing whole foods, food as it's meant to be, cooked well, not too much fried fatty food, and you're getting a variety, that means you're getting the full spectrum of nutrients. So often color can be a good indicator of phytonutrients. So trying to get, eat the rainbow, try and have a full variety. Look at your plate, you shouldn't be having a plate of Skittles, but you should be getting the variety of color there. So can you really brighten it up? Because nature is telling us what's in there. And for other people around the world, look at local food, look at seasonal food, because again, Mother Nature is far more intelligent than we are in many cases. So look at what is the seasonal food, what is the local food you can have, and really try and make those priority. And that's just the simplest way to do it, rather than overcomplicating and saying you need to get this percentage of this many apples a day, this much sort of whole grain starch. Just look at the simplicity of what makes you feel good, what makes you feel energized, what makes your, all of the lovely things of like your bowel movements, right? What makes you feel that, you feel full, but you don't feel like overfull, that you have an appropriate amount of hunger, you allow yourself to become hungry in between meals, and feel your thoughts as well. How are your thoughts? Are your thoughts clear? Have you got mental clarity? All of those are symptoms of either a good diet or a poor diet. So again, be your own guinea pig.
But Radha, don't you think that many people are aware of which food is good for them? So I'm just wondering, what do you think are the major barriers that keep them away from those good choices? Why do you think people make poor choices, and what are the best ways to bring those good choices in their life?
Definitely. And this is something I see very often, is that actually we have the opposite problem these days, in that we almost have too much knowledge. We are given so much knowledge by media and by the online world. And we all know what's good for us. We all know if there's a chocolate bar really in front of us and a really lovely salad, we're pretty sure we know which one is the healthier choice, but we still reach for the chocolate bar. So understanding health psychology is really important. And trying to make healthy choices easier is vital. So things like what food you have in the house, especially now on lockdown, that will dictate what food you can eat. So can you reduce the amount of junk food that you eat? Also, many people don't know how to cook. So having a healthy dish seems an impossible feat, because they think, well, I don't know how to cook that. But now, especially with all of these wonderful social media chefs coming up, you can learn really simple, healthy food that can be made in the same amount of time as an unhealthy meal or your microwave meal could be made. So for me, I think some of the responsibility definitely lies with us as individuals, but also on a societal level. We need to make it easier for healthy food to be a cheaper, affordable, and simpler choice for people. So having the chocolate bars and the crisps right near the checkouts in a supermarket versus having loads of fruit and veg there, and trying to make sure our advertising is targeted, reducing the amount of sugary drinks. Sugar is an addictive substance, and we also have to allow ourselves time to wean ourselves off very addictive substances. So don't give yourself too much of a hard time as well. But what you find when you start making stronger choices, and yes, it does take a little bit of willpower at the beginning, but soon you'll crave the right foods. And in Ayurveda, we talk about sort of cellular intelligence, in that at the beginning, we can't trust our instinct, because sometimes it's driven by perhaps that reward dopamine sort of center in the brain that's craving sugar. And it might be because we've had a poor night's sleep, we're craving sugar. But after a while, when we start feeding our bodies the right foods, the right drinks at the right times, we start to innately know what is good for us, innately know what makes us feel good. And at that point, you can start to trust your gut, literally, and understand that actually your body knows what's good for it and knows what it wants. You just need to give it a little bit of time, try and feed it the right foods, and eventually it will start guiding you.
Yeah, it's primarily listening to your own body and be aware of the psychology of healthy living. At the same time, be aware of how is society playing its own role to ensuring the kind of habits that we are picking up. Now, Radha, I would love to talk about something that runs in your blood, which is yoga. Primarily around movements and exercises and the importance of that in living a happy, fulfilling life, which is surrounded around well-being. So I personally come across several people who find yoga quite boring. So how do you find which exercise is good for you and what are your suggestions to them?
I completely empathize with many people who find yoga a little bit boring, because I have to admit I used to be one of them. And it actually, for me, again, like I always say, everything has a gift within it. It triggered me to start my own business a few years ago, which is called TOGA, TOGA, which is toning yoga. So my love was very much with, I love gym training, I love strength training, HIIT sessions, very high intensity, or very much focusing sort of on muscular endurance. So I wanted to find a way of integrating yoga and strength. And there is fantastic evidence coming out now on the mental benefit of doing things such as yoga and pranayama. And in terms of our mental health, it's absolutely rife in this world at the moment that many people are struggling with their mental health. And there is also evidence that general exercise, cardiovascular and strength training is helpful for not only our physical but our mental health too. So my goal was, how can I bring together the benefits of both worlds? How can I really draw on my Eastern background as well as my Western, and integrate what I do with personal training in with the incredible, deep, nourishing benefits of yoga? So what I would say to people that are struggling to start yoga, well, first of all, I'd probably say try one of my TOGA classes, which is a good introduction because it introduces you into some yoga movements, but still gives you a really good workout. But I'd also say, start doing a little bit at the end of maybe your strength training. If you're not used to yoga, try and sign up for a program that really guides you through it. And it's one of those wonderful positive feedback loops. The more you do it, the more you'll start to feel the difference. The more you start to feel the difference, the more encouraged and invigorated you'll feel, and you'll want to carry it on. So many people in this world are on prescription medicine, as I see with a lot of my patients. So can we use exercise as your prescription? And that is being seen in lifestyle prescribing now. So just as you would get up in the morning and take your pills, can you get up and move and do prescribed exercise? And eventually you'll love it and you will want to do it and you'll crave it. But at the beginning, it does take a little bit of discipline.
Yeah, so the guidance is really important from somebody who has actually mastered this art and science of yoga, where, so what you're also recommending is not this or that, it's bringing these two together. The strength training on one side and the stillness of yoga. When you bring that together, you have TOGA in your life. So Radha, there's so many people who would like to get into this niche of well-being and wellness coaching. What is your advice to them? How can they get started? What are the possible steps that they might consider before they get into this space?
So with this, with the area of well-being, it has, as you may have noticed, become quite an overpopulated market. So it's really important at the outset, before you try and make it into a career, to decide if this is something you want to enjoy for yourself, or if it's something that you really want to make into a business, because there is a lot of voices out in this field at the moment, and it is, like every other business venture, not the easiest to start off in. So I would say, first of all, really make sure this is something you're passionate about sharing. And like with all things, really then just start exploring. Find people that have done it before. Find people that are experts, that are leaders in this health space. And as a sort of medical professional as well, I would say, please try and be careful that the advice and guidance you share is not going to do harm. Because a lot of times, a lot of these, social media stars are sharing isn't always sort of underpinned with medical safety advice or even like physical safety advice. So I would say really try and make sure that you bring safety and protecting the client, protecting the person in front of you as a priority. So know your stuff. Remember what you're sharing. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people will listen to. So be careful what you share, because you can create an impact. And I've seen this with some of the diet products and the exercise fads, and some of them can be really harmful, and some of them can really make people feel worse than actually feel better. So I would say really let your goal be sharing wisdom with people. Share your joy and be completely authentic as well in what you share. Don't try and be perfect. I always am very open about the fact that I am absolutely not perfect, and I embrace my imperfection. So don't think you know it all, and always be willing to learn. So with anyone starting this, the health landscape is changing. There is new evidence, there is new studies being done every single week. Get engaged with the latest research. Be willing to always be a student, and don't ever stop developing, because there will be no point where we've figured it all out. We will always be learning and developing. So find someone that's done it, learn from them, and just keep your own internal mental, physical, spiritual growth going. Because the greatest thing you can do is show people what to do by living the example.
Yeah, and there's always something to learn, because there's always something new coming up for us to go deeper into what we're already doing. And so here's my last question to you, Radha. The kind of experience that you've gathered and accumulated for yourself, uh, the kind of life that you have lived, what do you know for sure with 100% certainty?
Is there such a thing? If you had a philosopher on the show, what do we know for certainty? I don't think there's very much. And I think that's actually part of the beauty and magic of life, is that we don't know a lot for sure. And I think that's beautiful. I'm in love with the mystery of it all. One of the things that I really learned was try and fall in love with only that which is permanent. And in all honesty, when that comes down to it, the only things that are permanent is, well, semi-permanent is the world around us in terms of Mother Nature and the universe, and some arrangement of all the atoms and matter in this universe will exist for at least our lifetime, if not a few lifetimes ahead. There is something timeless and limitless that lives within all of us, in my own personal opinion. And I believe having a connection with that great ancient self that has always been and will always be is absolutely important. So creating a daily practice where you connect with that part of you which is permanent. Don't become attached to the material around you. Don't become attached even to the way you look. Yes, love your body and love who you are, but remember, it will change. Even the people in your family that you love, all of us have to say goodbye eventually. So yes, love fully, live fully, but remember that everything changes, and that is part of the beauty of life. It's not something to be feared, not something to be avoided, not something to try and prevent necessarily, but it's something to embrace the change, because in that change we can savor the moments more beautifully, more wholly, because we know they are fleeting.
So beautifully defined and shared and narrated. Radha, thank you so much for your gracious presence, for everything that you have shared. I think it's going to go a long way for me in my personal life.
Thank you.
You were an amazing guest really kind, vulnerable. And I think I had a great learning from you, from this conversation. So whether it's being open to learning from other people or falling in love with something which is permanent, I think these were words of wisdom for me that's going to stay with me for the longest period of time.
Thank you.
So,
I really appreciate that.
thank you so much. Look forward to interact with you again. Stay blessed. Thank you.